Hey there, my name is Devan, and I have a confession to make. I am a nerd, a huge one. I like history and sports and statistics and audiobooks and podcasts and all things that are complicated. For example, here are a few things that I find that are fun. I read some textbooks for fun. For me, the best part about sports isn't necessarily the action, but the stats and the math that go along with it. I'm currently going through an audiobook about the War of the Roses. Don't know what that is? Don't worry about it, neither do most adults. I listened to the book that inspired the play Hamilton, which isn't that weird, except for the fact that it was the 36-hour listen, and I then followed it up with a book about George Washington that was 48 hours long. So yeah, I'm kind of a nerd. You see, that's the kind of thing that I love. Stories and statistics like that have a level of detail in them that is what I love diving into. Because I love understanding these things at a super deep level. Whether I'm learning about something in school for a class that I actually like, learning how to do things better in the sports that I play, or diving into the world and lore of some fantasy story, I want to learn as much as I can about what I'm getting into. So, why am I sharing about this? Well, this is the third of 4 weeks in a series called Most Important. It all comes back to this time when somebody asked Jesus, of all the commandments, which is the most important? Jesus had lots of meaningful stuff, which is why we're taking 4 weeks to talk about it. Tonight, let's look a little closer at one sentence. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. When we think about loving God, for a while Jesus says just what we would expect. Love Him with all your heart. Yeah, I love Him with all my heart and soul. Well, even if you don't really know what a soul is, it sounds right. But love God with my mind. What does it even mean to love God with our minds? Well, 3 or 4 ideas come to mind. Let's just go with one for tonight. When you love something, you learn about it. This is where we get back to my nerdiness. I love history and sports and fantasy stories and complicated stuff. And so I learn about that stuff. I gobble it up. I try and get all the information I can. And I also love Jesus. And so I just want to learn about Him. At first, it was straightforward gospel truths like John 3:16 and that God loves us enough, even enough to die for us. And that, like in Romans 10:13, it tells us that His loving and His saving power is free to all of us who reach out to Him. Things like the fact that Jesus came, Jesus died, Jesus rose again, Jesus is coming again is the faith that drew my heart and soul to Jesus. Later, it was learning about all the cool stories in the Old Testament. Then, working to understand the hard stuff Paul writes. Where it all came together for me was around Psalm 1:2. Which tells us that the psalmist meditates on the Lord day and night. Or Ephesians 4:11-16, which shows us that we need to learn more about God so we are not tossed about by the latest fad of what people think about God, but that in learning more about who God is, we become closer connected to Him and to other believers. Because when you love something, you learn about it. Now, my job tonight's kind of hard because when we hear learn, we usually think school. And for some of us, that's not a problem. Some of us love school and we can't get enough of what the teachers teach. And we love not just learning about the world around us, but also how it works. So if I say when you love God, you learn about Him, that sounds great. For some of us though, school isn't really our thing. What we learn about seems boring. We have to take tests, and honestly, guys, learning can be hard. So if I say, when you love God, you'll learn about Him, that sounds But even for us who don't like learning in school, I bet there's still something we like to learn about. I'd go as far to say we're all nerds. Maybe you don't think of yourself as a nerd, but even so, I bet you nerd out about something. Okay, I'm gonna try an experiment. I want each of us to think about one thing we like to learn about. It could be a school type thing or totally not a school type thing. Are you thinking about something? All right, so on the count of 3, say that thing out loud. So we're gonna all do this together. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Now, show of hands. Did anybody say they watch makeup videos on YouTube? Learning about eyeliner and lipsticks and blush and shadow, which ones are good and which ones are gross? And not only that, but also learning how to apply that stuff? I look good. But why do we nerd about all that stuff? It's because we love it. And when you love something, you'll learn about it. We want to get all we can out of these things. And that's just what Jesus is telling us we should do when he says, love your God with all your mind. If we're all drawn to Jesus, if we're even a little intrigued by his miracles, if we're fascinated about how he treated people, if we're shocked to imagine that he might be the creator God who willingly became a human, and even knowingly that he would have to go through puberty and everything, if we're humbled by the fact that he would die in our place, if we're amazed that he rose from the dead, if we're inspired to live like him and share about him with others, then maybe we do love him. And when you love something, you'll learn about it. You know, the Bible is filled with stories about people who have done incredible things and have told amazing tales of what God has done, with poetry that helps us think about God in new ways, and with essays that tell us flat out how awesome Jesus is. All these things work together to help us understand God better. That's why he put those stories in the Bible. So, here's a question for us to think about. When do we nerd out about things? What is that thing that we care about? When do we dive into that world? And what would it look like to take some of our nerd time about anything else and then transfer it over to God time? To think about who God is, what he's like, what the Bible teaches, so that we can put that into practice. Let's talk about it.